Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a big snowstorm which is currently out through parts of the Rockies. That's going to be heading down into the central plains where we already have some winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings up. We're also going to be seeing that move into the Ohio Valley and then into the interior northeast. Overnight, most of the models have shifted further to the south, so now it looks like the bullseye area is going to be somewhere over northern Ohio, northwestern Pennsylvania, northern New York, northern Vermont, northern Hampshire, and northern Maine. We're going to have my personal snowfall forecast at the end of today's video, and we're also going to be timing this out for you guys, so make sure you are staying all the way until the end. So here is what the current National Weather Service page looks like. We have some avalanche warnings in effect for some of the Cascades in northern Washington. Actually, in central Washington, we have some freeze warnings in southern Washington and northern Oregon. In northwestern Utah, we have some hard freeze warnings, red flag warnings for fire danger in effect for southern Utah and western Colorado. We have some winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings in effect for parts of Colorado, Nebraska, South Dakota, Wyoming, and southern Montana. That's for the system that we're going to be talking about. Right now it is in these areas, and it's going to be heading further to the south, where we already have our next batch of winter weather advisories in effect for southeastern Nebraska, eastern Kansas, and northwestern Missouri. We also have some more hard freeze warnings back through northern Texas and westernmost Oklahoma. Freeze warnings surrounding that, and then a huge area of freeze watches which stretches from northern Texas all the way up to Michigan and Ohio in that lighter blue color, and then a few more freeze warnings up for the northwest coast of Michigan as well. Yesterday, we had a high temperature for the continental United States of 15 miles northeast of Okeechobee, Florida, where they got to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Yesterday in Peterson, Utah, they had the low temperature, negative 7 degrees Fahrenheit in that area. East Bronson, Florida, they got 2.21 inches of rainfall. That was the highest rainfall report yesterday. And we had two tide snowfall reports for the highest in the nation yesterday. Angel Fire, New Mexico, they got 7 inches of reported snowfall yesterday, and 11 miles northeast of Amalia, New Mexico, they also got to 7 inches of reported snowfall yesterday. And that snowstorm that's going on right now in parts of Colorado, Wyoming, and some of the surrounding areas, we already have a few reports that's over a foot of snowfall, and it's still ongoing over some of these areas. So later today, we are expecting still some of that continued snowfall back through some of the central plains and the northern Rockies. We have your first low pressure, which is going to be up here, somewhere over this area in the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley, and the Great Lakes. Somewhere squashed right in between there is where we're going to see our second low pressure form in those areas. Exactly where that happens is going to be very crucial as to who gets the heaviest snowfall. If you're closer to the low pressure, you'll have higher intensity in terms of the precipitation, and if you get far enough to the north where that precipitation is in the form of snowfall, that's going to be that bullseye area. So a little bit north and west of the low pressure is going to be where the bullseye is actually going to set up with this storm, just because it'll be the area with the most intense snowfall. So this is going to be by early tomorrow morning, still snowing in parts of Colorado, Kansas, southern Nebraska. You can see that low pressure still back through here by this point, and we have a huge trailing cold front to the south of there that's staying all the way to parts of Colorado, and then we actually have a connecting low pressure which is back down through here. So an interesting type of setup that we do have. Now, if we continue this forward, you're going to see that by Tuesday morning or tomorrow morning, we're dealing with much of that snowfall centered over Kansas, Missouri, Colorado, some of the surrounding areas, with even lighter to moderate snowfall at times. This is by the afternoon hours. It's now starting to move into central Missouri, northern Illinois, and yesterday, by the way, we were expecting more of that bullseye to be back up through here. Well, now it has shifted further to the south, and pretty much every model now showing somewhere within this area seeing the heaviest snowfall. So still mixing in with some rain by tomorrow night over some of these areas in eastern Illinois, northern Indiana, parts of Ohio and Michigan as well, but it is breaking through with a bit of heavy snow as well in parts of Indiana, northwest Ohio, southern Michigan as well. And then by Wednesday in the early morning hours, it cools down enough where the surface temperatures are right around 34 to 35 degrees, but the higher up temperatures in the upper parts of the atmosphere are actually well below the freezing mark. So you're getting some of that cold air to kind of transfer to the bottom layers of the atmosphere with a shallow, warm layer. It's not going to be enough to melt away those snowflakes, so it will be coming down in the form of snowfall, even though it is above that benchmark 32-degree temperature. So we are dealing with heavy to moderate snowfall by Wednesday early morning in the areas surrounding Lake Erie. And then by Wednesday morning, right around 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, we're dealing with that low pressure now back up through Pennsylvania, the western half of Pennsylvania, northern Ohio, western New York, northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, and central Maine, all dealing with a light to moderate snowfall with a few pockets of heavier snowfall at times. These are snowfall rates that are going to be close to an inch or an inch and a half per hour, and this is going to be a really tough snow to shovel because it's going to be very heavy, wet snowfall. So really not, it's going to be kind of that back-breaking type of snow to shovel. Not going to be too pleasant to shovel. Definitely nothing that's going to be fluffy or it's going to be very good to make snowballs out of if you want to have a snowball fight, but it's not going to be nice to shovel out of your driveway with because this is going to be really heavy snowfall. So I would recommend taking a few turns at it, maybe going inside after about 15 minutes of shoveling just to give yourself a break from all that heavy wet snowfall that you're shoveling, because it will really be a fairly hard workout if you are going to be shoveling out all of that snowfall. Then by the afternoon hours, it's moving into northern Pennsylvania, western New York, switching over to snow in parts of New England because that low pressure is now in parts of the Hudson River Valley, and because of that, some of those areas in parts of eastern New England are going to start to switch over to a little bit of snow rain mix in some of those areas. But western New York is where it's really coming down heavy by this point. So this is by Wednesday in the early afternoon. Here's by the evening hours. You can see that we have some of that snow breaking out in parts of much of upstate New York, except for the downstate areas, and then back through the entire state of Vermont, maybe clipping parts of northern New Hampshire, and then also into northern Maine, getting stuck in some of that snowfall as well. And by the way, I wouldn't be surprised if some of this snowfall, some of this rainfall that you see on the back end actually does switch over to some snowfall. That wouldn't be out of the question because we do have a rather chilly air mass that's going to be taking place behind this storm briefly. And then by Thursday in the early morning hours, we're dealing with a little bit of snow still lingering on for New England. Maybe even some bigger cities like Boston and Concord start to switch over to a little bit of some snowfall mixing in with that rain. That low pressure is now in eastern Maine by this point. It's going to get held up over parts of eastern Quebec, so I'm not going to completely play through the storm, but it's going to continue to hammer back through these areas in northern Maine especially. So you might see a huge gradient where some areas just a few miles to the south see maybe 6 or 7 inches, and then you go up into near the Canadian border and you're dealing with some areas getting close to 18 inches of snowfall. That's just because we have another low pressure that's keeping this low pressure right here to kind of stall out, and this is not going to move for a very long time. So you're going to see multiple days of continuous snowfall if you live in the northernmost tier of Maine, and you can see it's moving very, very slowly by this point. So Thursday early afternoon, still snowing over northern New England and just lingering there through Thursday, even into Friday morning, still snowing in some of those areas in northern Maine. Here's what the total snowfall accumulations look like. All of this back up through here is not from this storm, that's from another storm, but anything that's south of there is from this storm. So you can see this huge stretch of about 2 to 4 inches, which goes from eastern Colorado to western Indiana. And then once you get into Indiana, Ohio, back through the interior northeast, that's where you're getting into a bit more of the heavier snowfall. Now, I would say probably take 75% of whatever your number is on the screen, and that's probably going to be a better estimate because we are dealing with rather warm temperatures for a snowfall event. Keep in mind that this is happening on the 21st, 22nd of the 20th, 21st, 22nd of April. So it's very late in the season to be seeing a cross-country winter storm that's impacting all of these areas over much of the United States. So you will have some trouble sticking with some of that snowfall. So I would cut these in half, or maybe take 3/4 of whatever amount you see on your screen, and that's probably going to be a better estimate. For example, if you see a 4 print on your specific location, probably cut that in half. Maybe you get 2 or 3 inches instead of that 4 or 5 inches that this particular model is showing. And in my snowfall forecast, I do take it into account. So that's how much I actually think will stick on some of those colder surfaces. This is what the GFS is showing. And you can see fairly similar, although it is actually a little bit further to the south than what the European model is showing. And it also shows some heavier amounts back through the interior northeast. So here's my snowfall forecast for this event. From today through Thursday, I'm expecting under an inch of snowfall back through the northern plains, the Rockies, and then even back through the central plains, the Ohio Valley, and into the interior northeast as well. You can see this broad swath of the country that I'm expecting to see at least some sort of snowfall, and this is definitely not the area that I think we'll see any major accumulations. This might just be a light dusting, maybe switching over to some rainfall later on in the event that might wash that away, but this is where I think you might see a little bit of snowflakes mix in, not necessarily anything that's gonna really accumulate. Here's that 1 to 3 inch area, and this is where I think you might start to see a little bit of decent accumulation. I have that 1 to 3 inch over much of Wyoming, Colorado, back through Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, even into central Illinois, pretty much the entire state of Indiana, much of Ohio, northwestern Pennsylvania, northern and western New York, much of Vermont, northern New Hampshire, northern and central Maine, as well as some of the Smoky Mountains in eastern West Virginia. This is where I think you could start to get into some lighter accumulations with this event. Here's that 3 to 6 inch area, and you can see for some of the mountains in northern and western Wyoming, as well as some of the Rockies in Colorado, stretching through parts of the plains in Kansas, Nebraska, and then even up through the interior northeast in the Ohio Valley. This is where I'm thinking 3 to 6 inches is more likely, and you might be wondering, if you live in eastern Indiana, why I kind of cut this area right here out of that 3 to 6 inch zone, and that's mainly just because I don't think 3 to 6 inches is gonna stick for you guys. So instead of putting you in the 3 to 6 inch area, I think anywhere in this black area that I just shaded in right here, I think you guys might get maybe 2 to 4 inches of snowfall, but I don't think it's enough to really put you up into that 3 to 6 inch area. That darker blue zone is where I think more of that will actually start to stick, and I think you might actually get maybe 3 to 4 inches of sticking accumulations in some of those areas. Here's that 6 to 12 inches of snowfall, and you can see some of the mountains in the Rockies, and then also through western New York, northern New York, and then also northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, northern Maine as well, is where I'm expecting 6+ inches of snowfall, and believe it or not, even a 12 to 18 inch shade there for parts of northern Colorado, and then also into northeastern Vermont, and then into northern New Hampshire, northern Maine. These areas most likely will not switch over to rain and will likely get clipped as that storm stalls out in Nova Scotia. It'll probably get clipped with some of that snowfall that's returning on the back end. So I'm going to up those numbers for those areas. Wouldn't even be surprised if in some areas in Colorado, in the higher elevations, and also northern Maine, that we see a few snowfall reports over 20 inches. That is definitely possible in some of the remote areas in northwestern Maine especially. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.